Aloha, everyone. It's Wednesday, and that means it's news day. The DAS team has scoured the highs and lows of the cyberverse to bring you the AI stories we find interesting, impactful, and fun. This week from Science Daily, we have AI and blood work. Routine hospital blood tests analyzed with machine learning can predict spinal cord injury severity and even mortality within days without relying on early neuro exams. Because the data is cheap and ubiquitous, the approach could bring fast triage and prognostics to nearly any hospital.
Except that it has to be pre-authorized now. It should be fast.
Coming in from Reuters, a big story about NVIDIA and OpenAI. NVIDIA plans to invest up to $100 billion in OpenAI via non-voting shares while supplying at least 10 gigawatts of data center systems. The cash OpenAI can then turn around to buy NVIDIA chips with. They estimate the first deployments will be as soon as late 2026 on the Vera Rubin platform. And this tight coupling could draw some antitrust scrutiny and concerns over a circular type of deal that reinforces each firm's market power. And then finally, we also have a story from TechCrunch, Huck's audio research app. 3 early notebook LM developers launched Hooks, an audio-first app that turns your inbox, calendar, and chosen topics into interactive AI-hosted podcasts and live stations that you can query. It's now available on iOS and Android, and the startup has raised $4.6 million after an invite-only pilot. It is September 24th, 2025, and this is episode 558. And today we have Beth and Andy, and I am Jimmy. And this is the Daily AI Show. I want to thank everyone for joining the live stream and all of you who are watching just a little later. If you haven't already, click the bell, like, subscribe, and join the newsletter at thedailyAIshow.com. Okay, so let's do a quick lightning round of stories from everyone before we delve deep into this week's news. Andy, what do you got for us?
Okay, this is a little longer than a lightning, but Google has announced a partnership with PayPal. And so this is in the space of agentic commerce. We talked about last week, we talked about their new AP2 protocol or agent. I forget what it's actually supposed to be, what the agent payments protocol, right? So APP or AP2. And that's all about how agents can be empowered to make commerce transactions for you online, including making all the haggling decisions, etc. And so now PayPal has come on board, and it's not a simple integration with PayPal that's being announced as. We're talking about a combination of Google's agents being able to negotiate prices, compare offers across multiple vendors, and then execute purchases entirely on their own. And this is in, sort of a direct competition with OpenAI's orders, fake release. They haven't actually released the product yet, but they've built the infrastructure in the application UI for you to ask ChatGPT to handle getting some product for you with whatever conditions you express to them in just natural conversation with your assistant in OpenAI. And remember, going all the way back to Carl's introduction of the Visa program that will enable you to sort of enable your assistants to use your Visa cards. Well, this Google PayPal integration is also associated with Amex and MasterCard. So now you've got these 4 major players: Google, PayPal, Amex, and MasterCard. And Google, as you know, is no slouch when it comes to the technical architecture that they're building and delivering, and they can deliver this through Chrome. So this is a big story, I think. And they have already 60 merchants and financial institutions on board with their approach. And it's exciting. And, it's going to lead to frictionless AI purchases. So we're looking at a future were a handful of major companies. OpenAI, maybe Amazon, if they kind of get, come out of the woodwork with something on the AI side for purchase transactions. You got to believe that at least on the Amazon platform, that's going to happen. And then Google, importantly, those companies. And let's not forget over in China, and I have a longer, deeper thing for my deeper dive on Alibaba and some announcements that have come out of that major counterpart to Amazon, right? That Alibaba is the Amazon of China, and China is much bigger than the United States. So anyway, that's what's happening. Those will drive, those major companies are going to drive the way we purchase in the future.
Awesome. Beth, do you have a lightning round story for us?
I do have a lightning round story, and it's one of those science developments that's inspired by nature. Microsoft has unveiled microfluidics cooling for AI chips, and what this does, it 3x's a reduction in energy usage. And the idea behind the liquid that's going to run through the channels, basically channels are etched into the silicone itself. And when you look at the image, it is, did I say it wrong? Silicon? Yes, I did. Yes. Nucleus, right? Yeah, there we go.
Lubricant, and it's used in breast implants, just to keep that separate. Go ahead. I'm sorry to interrupt.
Yes, these are chips, not breasts. That's a little commercial for watching our show. If you don't come live, maybe you don't get that. I don't know. Anyway, the channels are etched into the material, and they're sort of shaped like veins on leaves, and the veins in butterfly wings, right? Those kinds of patterns. They also look a little like, to me, like trees with a root system. So the coolant, which is designed right now as water, but could be not water at some point in the future. Water is actually just the best, most environmentally friendly, and most thermo efficient, right? It's like it is better for the environment if you use the water, but it's designed as a closed water system in the future. So when you put the water in, then it just cycles. So you're only investing in the water once. And given the other news of all of the power things that are going to be built, which is something somebody else is going to talk about, we are in fact creating the coolant and the systems necessary so that the power that is built is used more efficiently. And that is a very exciting story.
Mm-hmm. Let me comment on that one quickly. That there might be trade-offs there, because what we're talking about really is like a coolant system in a car where water from the radiator is flowing through the engine, which is generating the heat, and then it goes to a radiator that actually, a fan drives through to kind of blow off the heat that way. So previously, chips have used just a mechanical conductive heat sink to try to move the heat away from the chip itself. And now we're talking about packing a lot of microfluidic channels onto the chip itself. And I can totally understand that improves the efficiency of heat transport in the chip. But remember that the whole objective of a chip is to try to get all of the trillions of transistors that are on these microchips close together to each other, so that reduces the amount of time that it takes for computational transactions to happen on the chip. Suddenly inserting a whole bunch of tubes into the chip itself in its design and manufacturing that challenges my idea of, hey, we really need to shrink these chips down so that all the parts are closer together. Now we're going to spread them apart in order to assist in energy transfer. And I think it might work, because energy is heating up the chip is really one of the central problems of that right now. And remember back to when the Blackwell chips from NVIDIA were first released, they were delayed again and again because they weren't able to transport the heat that was generated by that very dense chip structure away from the mechanics of it.
Right.
Yeah.
And we've talked over and over, well, we've talked many times on the show about the sort of the chip wars, right? The demand for chips is increasing. The demand for chips is continually increasing. Therefore, even if more chips are created, we're still in that same kind of tension of there being more uses for chips than chips for uses. And if you can get Microsoft seems to be like they already have their own chip design, but Microsoft also seems to be kind of creating adjacent things so that it can be useful without a new chip design, right? Like, I mean, I guess you would do this in the chip. What I wonder is, are we moving toward photonics and a cooling system, right? Are we moving toward energy that is less heat intensive and faster, plus a channel kind of design like this?
Yeah, a good point about photonic chips, because photons running through glass cables, if you will, don't generate heat, whereas electrons running through electric conductivity, that the resistance that's associated with that actually does create the heat that we have a problem getting out of the chip space.
And I have questions about photons traveling over distance, right? Is light traveling as susceptible to a break in distance as electricity needing a common, right? Electricity can't break or you have a short. Yes, this is welcome to 7th grade science with Beth on the Daily AI Show.
Glass fibers are made flexibly now, right? And they're flexible, so they're unlikely to break.
June, save us.
Okay.
Thank you, Andy.
All right. So for my lightning round story, it was just a real quick story about Google. So weave off of Google, but what's interesting about this is Google AI mode is now in Spanish globally. So they announced that they were going to release AI mode to 180 different countries, and they've been rolling that out steadily. But now globally, they support Spanish-speaking countries and AI mode in Spanish on a global level, which I thought was an interesting little story. I'm sure there will be more of these kinds of announcements as they roll out further and further. Okay, so now, what is the story of fiery passion? Andy, what is your story of fiery passion?
Okay, I telegraphed it before. I want to talk about Alibaba. So first, and that because Alibaba just released a whole host of new models, AI models that are, state of the art now, and it's the Alibaba Qwen 3-Max that is their new 1 trillion parameter flagship model that is beating the major players out there on benchmarks, and it rivals the best AI models in coding and reasoning. But first, I just want to provide a little background on what Alibaba is, because I can hardly keep straight the other players in that space, like Tencent and ByteDance, and these are names that come out because we are talking about AI, but these companies are much larger than just their AI business segment. So Alibaba is the Amazon of China, and their platform Taobao and Tmall, another one, are China's retail e-commerce giants. And those are the marketplaces, just like Amazon.com. And they also do international e-commerce at AliExpress, Alibaba.com, and they connect globally buyers and sellers, much like the Amazon marketplace does. Then they have logistics, which is supply chain management and cross-border commerce deliveries, if you will, just like, Amazon is really involved in logistics, right? You see the Amazon trucks on your driveway literally every day. Um, then they have digital media and entertainment, just like Amazon does. They have a thing called Alibaba Pictures, which does film production, just like Prime does. And they have holdings in news media, like South China Morning Post. So we're talking about a major conglomerate here that also delves into digital payments. They do transactional platforms out there for mobile payment and financial technology. And plus, like Amazon, they have, like Web Services, they have a complete cloud computing service called Alibaba Cloud. So this is an enormous company. And they've just released open source this raft of new Quen models. Let me just talk about them very quickly. So I mentioned Quen 3 Max, which is their new state-of-the-art one. On benchmarks, their Quen 3 Max Instruct is beating Claude Opus 4 and DeepSeek v3.1 on coding and agent tasks. And they have a thinking variant that is possessed of the ability to do additional or adjustable test time inference compute application. And that's already hit perfect scores on two major benchmarks with test time scaling, meaning that I can add additional thinking to it. And they also are superior in code execution on that thinking variant as well. But here's the interesting one. There's a bunch of them. The one I want to talk about is Quen 3-Next. It's a mixture of experts architecture. And we talked yesterday about how mixture of experts emerged in the architectural design of LLMs to allow for selective address of the parameters within a model to focus on those areas where the representations are more aligned with or surrounding the expertise that can answer a user's query. So we talked about how we believe that GPT-5 may have as many as, I don't know, a dozen different expert built into its architecture, and it has a router that assigns your query to one of those experts. Well, Quen 3 Next is a fast MOE architecture, mixture of experts architecture, that has 512 experts. But at any one time, it only activates 10 of those, plus a shared expert per step. Okay, so this is a very interesting development here in the context of how is the architectural design of LLMs moving, and it's moving towards this mixture of experts architecture. And Quen 3 Next is, available now. That 512 expert model is available in just a 32 billion parameter model, which means that you can put it on a local device. And they have, that's a 32 billion. And they also have two 80 billion variants, right, with for assistance and for thinking and reasoning. And the 80 billion are also small enough to run on a pretty powerful, like, local computer if you buy one. Not your simple, portable laptop, but a killer PC, or an Apple Mac Mini, for example, can handle those 80 billion size models. And then on top of that, they launched, and the news items that kind of led to my talking about this one today, basically say, look, wow, they did a huge release of all of these different models that have very specialized capabilities. One of them is called Quen 3 Guard, which automatically blocks unsafe AI content in 120 languages. It's like, and the article said, it's like a bouncer for your chatbot. They have a Quen Chat Travel Planner, which builds your entire trip itinerary. Just tell it 5 days in Tokyo and you get a complete day-by-day plan. And then they have Quen 3 Live Translate Flash, which can do in real time face-to-face conversations, and it reads lips and gestures simultaneously if you employ the camera. Wow. Okay, and then Quen 3 Coder is one of their coding ones, and it's available on Hugging Face and GitHub. And then finally, Qwen 3 VL turns screenshots into working websites and can operate your computer by understanding what's on the screen. So Alibaba, big player, arguably bigger than Amazon, and they've just released into the wild, open source, all of these benchmark beating models.
That's a massive release of a slate of models there. And it does seem like they've taken not only the approach of trying to make the best model out there, right? SOTA model, but also they've broken down these separate smaller models for specific tasks. So they kind of seem to be riding the fence of both multiple smaller models and really large model development.
Yeah, so there's a thing called an application specific integrated circuit. Mm-hmm. And so this is like application specific smaller models, right? Yeah. I'm talking about the chip side, but just the whole idea that you can design and build something that's smaller and more efficient, which is what an ASIC does in effect. Right. It being application specific, instead of a field programmable gate array, FPGA, which can be programmed to do anything. That's kind of a general purpose model in the chip world. An ASIC is the specific application that gets really tight and efficient. And so is it that as they design these products for specific applications, they're building models that do that one especially well. And this matches up with what we're talking about in the future, where agents will call upon other models that are agentified, if you will, to borrow from their expertise. And they'll choose those models that are very, very tightly aligned with what the objective of their assistant demand is. And so we see this picture of both agentic commerce, where there's agents running around and buying things for us, and our assistants that are trying to think clearly, being able to call upon specific models to do something very special. Like if you want to give it an image, for example, it's not going to just use a general purpose model necessarily for that. It'll go to one that it knows works particularly well for that image translation.
There, I keep trying to find the name of the model, and I think it may be the WAN, WAN, but it's potentially coming for Runway Act 2 territory, right? It is reading your facial features and moving. It seems to be, there seem to be two places where these things kind of go. One is like the video that is like this close, right? So it's very intense on your face and can read like this kind of movement, and then like dance, right? So full body. There doesn't seem to be a lot of overlap in like, I can follow a character moving through space. That was Wonder Dynamics maybe, but the what I haven't seen and I'm very interested is what is the time limit on that? Because Runways Act 2 is still limited to 30-second clips. Right, you can add a 30-second video, and it will do the avatar over it. And yeah, there were a couple of posts I saw that said AI acting, right, being able to perform being able to perform the AI puppet, which is essentially what Madge is also, is maybe a 2026 mainstream thing. We're moving toward it really quickly. Anyway.
Yeah, well, see, it's what I find most interesting is on this story, Andy, is you mentioned as ASIC, and Beth, you mentioned the WAN. Now that sounds like a specialized model, which could be a smaller model because it has a specific, result that it's trying to output. But does this give more evidence to edge AI? Does this give more evidence that these smaller models are going to live on specific hardware because ASIC is built for that particular software application, right? are we going to start seeing mass production of SMBs and I'm sorry, SMCs and other type of edge AI devices that will be application specific, right? What you put on this edge AI device onto your camera so that it can now you can perform and puppet using the WAN. It's a WAN specific device that's attached to your camera, right? And those kinds of applications coming out in the future, which would maybe lessen the load on the data center side, or maybe put the data center side of things on the back end when you're doing your post processing or something along those lines. But doing the but having that in this case that in camera effect does sound really interesting to me, because it will cut down on the overall process.
Right, and you can run it on, like Andy said, you can run it on like yesterday's or yesterday, which was either 7 minutes ago or 10 years ago, right? But you can run it on M1 chips, M2 chips, M3 chips, right? Those are much cheaper, like on a Mac Mini or something like that, right? So you can get that kind of tech, and if that's all that machine is doing, you have this dedicated, pretty decent power compute source with power source.
Well, so before I move on to my story of fiery passion, which I think will be everybody's, will have something to say. Beth, do you have a story of fiery passion that you want to bring to us?
That is more my story of fiery passion. I think that where things are going in terms of performing inside an AI and the collaborative performance, there's another company called Attention released a demo where it's not released a demo with, I don't know if it's hardware or software, but it's technology that is the interface between the voice AI. It doesn't run the voice AI. You can choose whatever voice you want, but it fixes the problem of understanding who the voice AI is supposed to, like, what's the role in this, and only speak when you're being spoken to directly, like those kinds of things that the voice assistants don't get particularly well, right? Like voice assistants right now are designed for you to be alone talking to your voice assistant. That kind of stuff is exciting.
I saw that as well. It's Attention Labs, and the idea is that they've focused on the difficult problem of multi-voice conversations in a room, and deciding when the AI voice should actually insert itself. Should it ever speak, or should it just listen and wait until there's a gap where it can offer something? And that kind of attention to what the speakers are in the room has not been a great skill in the voice-enabled AI assistants that we have. And if you've ever just tried to have a conversation with ChatGPT and you found that like a bark interrupts it, and then it goes back to square one, and it doesn't work very well. The demo that Attention Labs put out yesterday, that is really impressive, because there's 4 or 5 people in the room talking continuously, and AI is their AI, which is not the voice assistant, the LLM voice assistant, but rather the marshal, the orchestrator of the conversation, is listening to each one of them. It identifies each one of the speakers as speaker 1, speaker 2, speaker 3. It understands who's saying what, and then it very politely responds when asked to, or it can interject correctly like a human would, paying attention to what's actually happening in the conversation. And when it does interrupt, what it does then is it calls on the LLM to provide the response. And it does that with zero latency, 100 milliseconds, pretty close to zero latency. So it's very, very fluent in human multi-speaker conversations.
And it's absolutely, and thank you for providing all that detail. It's something I'm interested in as a producer of multi-people conversations about AI. It sounds like tech that could, in fact, allow us to have a designated AI co-host for the things that we're doing.
And it
Attention
runs
Labs, give us a go. But sorry, Andy, what did you say?
I'm just adding that, yes, absolutely, that's the application space. Is we've always talked on as a team about adding an AI co-host, but we're worried that the AI co-host would not be they would interrupt even more than I do. So, it's not interacting via the cloud with to deliver its service. It's local and manages the conversation and is interfacing with both LLMs and the live humans in this space.
And that just blipped for me, but I'm going to say that this is, I don't know if the internet would like us not to be talking about this, but that's not going to persuade us not to. So, yay. Fiery passion. Yeah. Jimmy, I cannot hear you now. Jimmy, we can't hear you. Can you hear me?
Ooh. Okay, well, that happens.
Can I hear you? You are Carl now, so you have to go and pray to the Carl gods to be given your voice back.
Okay, in the meantime, I'll throw out something that's of additional interest. This is back to Google. So Google just, you have to keep track of what Google's doing because they're putting out a lot of releases continuously. They have many divisions out there. And Google Labs is where you should kind of see the sort of leading edge of what they're working on. And they just released something called Google Mixboard. Think of it as a vision board that you give a text prompt to, and it'll build a whole bunch of imagery that's aligned with what you're talking about. And so you can go play with Google Mixboard right now at aistudio.google.com and go to labs or and then so there's one other thing and I'll just finish off on the check out Mixboard and you have to go to labs, Google Labs, and then you'll see Mixboards there. And then Google also upgraded their voice interaction. So this is kind of a weave off of what we were just talking about with Attention Labs, adding a new layer of technology on top of the LLM voice APIs, the real-time APIs where you're talking, in voice with the AI assistants. That Attention Labs thing is putting a new layer in there that articulates that much better for the voice assistants. Now Google has upgraded their Gemini Live, which is their real-time API, and it is using a native audio model. So that means it's not having to have a couple of models, one, the LLM working in text, and having to transcribe the audio to text and then give the text to the model and so on. This is a native audio model. It's been trained purely on voice. And so it's built for real-time interaction reliability. It adds tighter audio handling, and so conversations flow really smoothly with this new API. And you don't really need to use the API to experience it. You can go talk to it right now, again, at aistudio.google.com, and right on the main page that you get there, you'll see one of the four sort of promotional slots that they're using there is to talk to Google Live, Gemini Live.
Excellent. Can you hear me now?
Yes.
Awesome. Cool. All right, so let's go ahead and move on to what I think might be the meatiest story that we have, and that is the NVIDIA and OpenAI deal. So, if you haven't heard already, because it did come out over the last couple of days, is NVIDIA is set to invest $100 billion into OpenAI. Now, what's a little different about this is NVIDIA and OpenAI entered into this deal for $100 billion. What NVIDIA is going to do is first, it's going to give OpenAI $10 billion of that $100 billion. And with that $10 billion, OpenAI is now going to buy a gigawatt worth of chips from NVIDIA. And then the deal will supposedly continue to eventually end up with 10 gigawatts of chips that OpenAI will buy from NVIDIA, but NVIDIA will give more billions to OpenAI to buy more NVIDIA chips. So it's a very circular deal, which has brought up a few questions of antitrust, the positions of these two juggernauts in the field itself. There's some reports that OpenAI, when OpenAI makes a change or a deal or makes some sort of movement in the system, that affects everybody else. So like you see increases in valuation, and you see increases in stock prices by several percentage points whenever some new deal is announced. And this is just coming right off of the back of OpenAI and Oracle's deal, which shot Oracle's percentage up by what, 40%? I think Andy told us the other day. And so what exactly is going on here? The details aren't the minute details of the deal haven't been announced, of course, but there hasn't also been any comment when folks like Reuters and whatnot follow up with OpenAI about this. So not to cast too much of a shadow on it, but most of these kinds of deals are seen as a little red flag, if not yellow flag, if not red flag in these areas. But it doesn't seem to be throwing up any kind of questions or resistance coming in from any of the regulators or anything like that. But it is an interesting take, or an interesting view into how interconnected all of these large tech companies are, especially when you have NVIDIA, who has over 50% or about 50% of all the chips inside the data centers that are using AI. And you've got OpenAI, which is the forefront and the mass mover when it comes to AI and AI development. So what's going to play out of this? Thoughts?
Yeah, didn't this just follow on news a few days ago that OpenAI was going to commit to 300 billion of NVIDIA chips over the next while, and that popped NVIDIA's stock. And this is all happening in the context of the federally endorsed approach to improving AI infrastructure in the United States called Stargate, which includes Oracle, SoftBank, OpenAI, NVIDIA. Like that group of companies is looking to significantly increase the number and power, the gigawatt totality of AI infrastructure for the United States. So again, as context, Oracle, a whole other story about Larry Ellison suddenly being not only, deeply involved with this, initiative for AI infrastructure because Oracle, his company that he owns 40% of. I don't understand how such an ancient company can still have 40% ownership by a single individual. Yeah, I guess he was been buying back shares over the time. It must have been the way it happened. But anyway, he's involved in that, but he's also becoming the Hearst of our time, the Randolph Hearst who owned all of the media. So his son owns CBS. They're making a play for Paramount and others that they are going to control that. He's going to own TikTok. You know, there's going to be a concentration of media power in that guy's hands. But also in this space, he's right alongside these players who are building the gigawatts and generating jobs as we build out these data centers. So the deal with OpenAI and NVIDIA has some sketchiness about it for a couple of reasons, and I'm going to add one. One is that, okay, they are buying equity. And so they're sending over $100 billion that they don't have, by the way. They don't have free available $100 billion in cash. So it's a commitment over time. It's not, that's why, Jimmy said, okay, we're going to see 10 billion go across immediately, but it's a commitment to 100 billion over time. But there's this simultaneous commitment from OpenAI to spend 300 billion with NVIDIA over some period of time. So there's a lot of, moving parts here, not fully understood. But here's the sketchiness of it is that the 100 billion that they're going to invest over time won't actually have to be spent by buying NVIDIA chips. They're structuring a new approach where NVIDIA will lease the compute. So NVIDIA will use its cash flow to assist in building the Stargate centers by providing chips. And then they'll lease that back. So it's, NVIDIA doesn't have to immediately send over the cost of the chips. They can buy it on terms, basically. So there's all these financing complications for understanding how these interconnected companies now are doing all of this. And what's Oracle's role in all of that? And what's SoftBank's role? What money is SoftBank putting? Somebody needs to give us a chart on how that whole thing is going on. But an important point here also is that this deal between NVIDIA and OpenAI wasn't the teams of OpenAI and NVIDIA getting together and notifying all of their partners and doing this in a kind of a business development way. It was Jensen Huang and Sam Altman having one-on-one meetings, and no investment bankers were involved in this equity acquisition, this agreement to acquire equity in OpenAI. And they didn't let Microsoft know until the day before the deal was signed. Now, Microsoft owns a lot of OpenAI, right? There's this, bizarre structure that was created, which gives Microsoft entitlement to most of OpenAI's profits going forward until they reach a certain level. And then that all kind of goes away. So anyway, Microsoft, as you know, has historically been using only OpenAI AI behind the scenes, and now has shifted away from that. And they're starting to employ Anthropic and many others in the Azure cloud format. So just there's a lot of back rooms, smoke-filled back rooms, and maybe not smoke-filled anymore, unless they're using hookahs. There's a lot going on behind the scenes here that we don't fully understand. But the good news, I think, in all of this is that there's a lot of money and a lot of intention on the part of these players to fulfill on the competition that our government and our private sector understand to be underway between AI in the US model and in US companies in competition with the Chinese companies like Alibaba that are, neck and neck, and maybe even surpassing the capabilities of our systems. But we've got to have the compute, and we've got to have the money, and it seems to all be kind of flowing around in a circular fashion at this point.
Right, absolutely. And as you were talking, I'm wondering if the backroom deal that happened between those two players were really involved in looking at the problem that OpenAI has and how to fix it. Because if you're leasing the money worth of something, that could be potentially considered to be a donation as opposed to actual funds, and actual funds then would need to be approved in the nonprofit structure or the not-for-profit structure. It's a nonprofit that is the governing body of OpenAI, right?
Yeah, I don't know how the organization model for OpenAI has shifted already or is intended to be shifted in the near future, and which of the entities that are a part of that's a whole another, there's another shell game, right?
Yeah, it's a whole nother level that they'll have to explain. And well, that's one of the major questions too, is does this kind of deal push them away from going full nonprofit or public benefit corporation, that play that they've been trying to push, which of course have had their own pushback from Elon and things like that. But is there, or for-profit, I should say, sorry, that for-profit move. So how does this affect that? Where in the process or regulation or proof that they're trying to move X, Y, or Z to to get that final result? And that'll be interesting to see what plays out because of these kinds of circular deals that are going around.
It also happens within the context of the decision that came down for Google, which was an antitrust, right? Like, are there too many things? Does Google embody too many things that creates locking out people from competition? And the judgment did not basically say you're doing a bunch of stuff wrong. You have to do something. You have to do a bunch of stuff different. It's just a little bit. And I read what we're talking about for OpenAI and NVIDIA a little like the initial decisions made with training, right? AI is moving so quickly. If we do something wrong, if we do something now that it's decided later that it's wrong, we are also betting that it'll be worth it anyway, right?
Yeah, which is in alignment with the general tech sector Silicon Valley attitude is go fast, break things, and ask for forgiveness.
Yeah.
So
pay the fines.
Right. So we'll see how this plays out. Okay. Before I move on to my story of fiery passion, was there any other stories that you guys wanted to cover?
You're full of passion today. No, go. I thought the whole NVIDIA OpenAI thing was your story of burning passion, but you have another. Let's go.
Right. So, so this, you know me, I always like stories that are about AI and science. And so one of the stories I mentioned at the top was how the University of Waterloo has made an AI breakthrough that finds life-saving insights in everyday blood work. All right. So the idea is that an AI-powered analysis of routine blood tests can reveal hidden patterns that predict recovery and survival after spinal cord injuries. This breakthrough could make life-saving predictions affordable and accessible in hospitals worldwide. So, you know, if you've ever had to go to the hospital, they're always taking blood for analysis, part of the tests and things like that. What's interesting about this application is, so the team at the University of Waterloo, what they did was they created a machine learning algorithm to view thousands upon thousands of sampled hospital data from over like 2,600 patients, and they were able to analyze millions of data points and discover that there's hidden patterns in common blood measurements, such as electrolytes and immune cells taken during the first 3 weeks after a spinal cord injury. And so that is a highlight to mention, is that this is all surrounding spinal cord injuries, which I found out from the article is far more prevalent than I was led to believe. So they found that these patterns could help forecast recovery and injury severity, even without early neurological exams, right? Because anything with the spine, your neural system, your nerves, all of those kinds of things, they want to make sure that you're not experiencing any issues. And apparently, even with early neurological exams, they're not always reliable, as they depend on patients' responsiveness. So, from Dr. Marze Muzavi Rizi from Waterloo, she says, while a single biomarker measured at a single time point can have predictive power, the broader story lies in multiple biomarkers and the changes they show over time. So basically, what they're able to do is analyze all of this common blood work. So database of information that we already have, recognize these patterns and use these patterns with machine learning to identify potential severity cases, or and just treat the patient earlier, because they can see these patterns come out of their blood work, which I think is a great example. And I know I say this every time when I bring up an AI and science story, but this is a great example of how AI is being applied and can be applied relatively quickly to our existing system, right? Because there's always a big gap between state of the art of the technology and what we can see on the ground, right? Because this data already exists, because the process of taking this blood work already exists, all they really have to do is build in a system where they can now apply the algorithm, apply the model to insert themselves within the existing process to see if they see these markers, and then take the extra steps to go, hey, we might want to do these extra steps to solve for a potential issue, which will save lives. So I think that's kind of the key takeaway for me, is not only is this an application of AI for good in helping people, but it's one of those stopgaps that can be inserted really quickly, as opposed to, yes, we're gonna cure cancer through a decade of AI application to cancer research, that kind of thing. So that's kind of my story of fiery passion, because this for all lack of a better term, this is a quick fix.
Right. I just put in the chat, let's start talking about edge AI for blood work. Right now, sonogram machines, sonograph, x-ray, those sorts of things are much more intensive technology, but the tech that is used to analyze blood work is actually getting smaller and smaller and smaller, right? So I could see like small communities, like you have a gym membership and you upgrade to, like, here you go, you want to start doing some analysis on your health in this context, like a cooperative or a collaborative.
So I'll wrap up today with a cluster of AI in media, or AI in the creative realm, a couple of quick stories that kind of give you a little wider view of the moves that seem to be happening. Number one, like I mentioned before, that Hux app, HUXE, started by some X Notebook LM developers. What's really interesting about their app, and they've had it on invite only for a while, but now it's to general release, is not only does it the podcasting option of like what Notebook LM does, this allows you to do multiple AI podcasters, but it's also interruptible and interactable. So you can ask questions of the host and they'll respond to you. You can get into the mix of whatever subject that you're researching or listening about. Plus, it integrates your emails and calendars, so it can talk to you about upcoming events and getting you prepped for those kinds of things. But the emails is interesting. So all of you who really like Substack or Beehive and have all of these newsletters coming in, this is a great way to aggregate information for you. I haven't, had a chance to use it yet, but it is really interesting to see if this will be a better way for me to consume that content and that information, because there is just so much information to keep apprised of. So this might be a way to help curate that down.
Yeah, let me comment on that. I think that tool is going to disrupt the daily AI show. Our purpose of being is to actually digest all of this information and give it to you in at least a compact 1 hour format. If that tool works as well as this, group of talking heads and talks to you and digests it in a more compact way, I think we're just going to have to, set the DA.
Well, okay, so there is some precedent here. Now, 11 Labs did start off, almost a year ago, I think, where they have voice actors, or you can provide your voice to be used in a commercial sense. So, and we also have AI avatars being developed. So, Andy, we could create full vocal and visual AI avatars of ourselves that can now be the voices. Theoretically, could be the voices and performances within your personalized podcasting app like Hux. And then so you could always make a version of the Daily AI show with us. And then, of course,
And then
there'll be some sort of residuals built into that. But
then we could do something else.
Okay, the Daily AI show is not going anywhere. Thank you very much. In fact, we look to be growing. If you would like to sponsor it, please reach out to us at the Daily AI Show at gmail.com, as we are continuing to grow. But this does change commutes, I think, right? Like your commute, your walk around, you're getting your 10,000 steps in, right? Those kinds of things that are time intensive and need to happen, and are often where people are consuming media now, right? I think what it interrupts, Andy, is is like all of the tech podcasts, right?
Yeah.
Because now you're going to be able to get the summary. In which case, streams like ours are even more important, because we're not just giving you the information, we're giving you our reaction, and you can share your reaction with us in the chat on YouTube when we stream. Thank you.
That live interaction there, I think, is going to be really important in the future.
Yeah, let me just add one other thing, which is with respect to Notebook LM, which the Hux app may, have a different take on. I just yesterday saw on my Instagram feed a post, an explainer on something that I was quite interested in, which is specifically LLM JEPA, a new approach to training AIs. But it had the format that I recognized immediately of Notebook LM. It was a single voice, and it was slide after slide, but the very, very recognizable Notebook LM slide presentation. And at the very end, it just showed Notebook LM, and so there's an example of somebody who was generating a short form video / podcast kind of thing, an explainer on a technical subject using Notebook LM. And I like the idea of Hux being able to aggregate across multiple sources, something, but in Notebook LM, you would have to actually manually collect those sources. But I think that we're not far away from being able to, if it's not already there as a feature, to ask Notebook LM to go and do the deep research necessary to address a topic of your definition.
Yeah, I agree with you. I think we'll be seeing that very soon. One last thing connected to this story is because it's about podcasting, and I think a couple of weeks ago, one of the largest, or an ex executive of one of the largest podcasting companies said that they're going to be generating podcasts for about $1 through.
Yeah.
So they're going to be releasing thousands of various podcasts on various topics out there, but it's only going to cost them about $1 to produce. So so from the business side of things, that's such a low cost of production. They don't necessarily need it to be good, but
Right.
people will have a flood of possible podcasts to listen to or to watch and things like that. So I just bring it up because the larger story of how this might be might be affecting podcasts as a media platform. Now, just a couple more stories and we'll just wrap it up for today. There in Variety, at the at the ACFM, which is the Asian Content and Film. I forget what the last part is here. Essentially, a film festival, that film market. That's what it was. Asian Contents and Film Market. My apologies. But essentially, it's a conference about announcing the latest media and content coming out in Asia, and one of the big winners there as part of that conference or convention was Bernie Su, who's a producer for Pickford AI. And Pickford AI created a series called Whispers. And Whispers is an AI created series which uses, it's an interactive series that the audience can interact with and contribute to and things like that. There were questions of how they built it and everything like that, because it's around AI in creative spaces. So it's definitely going to be a topic. But what was interesting was they did use voice actors, but they strictly adhered to the SAG-AFTRA requirements for AI transparency and all of that, and the producer was very upfront about wanting to be transparent about the process. They did note that there was some question on whether some actors would have were potentially to join them but decided not to because of what they felt was maybe fan backlash or things like that. So still an evolving space. It's gonna be contentious, but to see that an AI project was showcased in a large event like that is showing that there's more and more progression in that, including music. There's the human lyricist Talisha Jones and her AI artist Zania Monet have together signed a multi-million-dollar deal with I think it's called Howard Media, and this was in a little bit of the media news because There was some backlash from some other artists. They went back and forth, but this is a $3 million deal. And, we reported like a month or two ago about another music designer, for lack of a better term, for that uses AI to generate and create their music, that got a deal, a similar type of deal. Not as much, I don't think, but 3 million is a number that is going to cause people to take notice what's going on here. What's interesting about the article that I read was that the artist uses Suno to construct the music and the performance, the overall song. So this is a relatively new AI generation company who's gotten a lot of buzz, who's now being used in actual applied music creation, which now is making these $1 million deals with these various labels and things like that. So another move in that space. And that's basically the stories that I wanted to make sure that we covered for today. And shout out to Greg. Yes, I have seen a couple of episodes of Chief of War. It's very, very promising. I have heard good things on the back end in its creation, so I feel that my support of it is justified. And if anyone does want to learn about a very critical and pivotal piece in Hawaiian history, Chief of War is going to give you some dramatized, of course, but some insight in what was happening all at that time. Okay, so I think that'll be it. We'll wrap up here. I want to thank everybody in chat, our viewers and subscribers, and please continue the discussion in our Slack community. Head over to dailyaishowcommunity.com to sign up. On Thursday, we have CRISPR GPT, when AI starts writing life. And on Friday, our favorite AI happenings this week. See you all tomorrow. Aloha.